Thomas sent this clip in of flying at Lake Garda, coming in for landing approach. Ay, 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 ay. Okay, what happened there? So he's approaching, pointed into wind, and the glider just folds up. Or does it? Let's have a look in slow-mo at what's going on here. So he's on an acro glider, he's fairly well loaded on it, and he's got a normal acro harness, so there's nothing to do with wing loading. And in the beginning here you can see there's quite a lot of wind. He's pointed into wind, and I'm just going to play at a normal speed there. You can see he's just kind of hovering over the landing field, so that means the wind is at least 30 k's an hour, and he's pointed into wind here. So it's pretty strong wind, and the windsock on the side of the picture there isn't showing much wind. So there's clearly quite a lot of shear between strong wind at the top and very light wind at the bottom. And something that contributes to that is the fact that he's landing next to the lake. So the wind at the bottom here and the air is likely to be cooled by the lake, and it's going to create a layer of very slow moving air, whereas above the air has got the chance to kind of slide over the top, and it's encouraging the air mass to form this shear. There's also a little bit more of a wind that's blowing offshore. The trees are getting pulled over to the side here. So the wind there's a difference in wind direction at the top. You can see there with the windsock, and down at the bottom, all the boats are going to point into wind. They act like windsocks as well. So you can use these when you're coming into your landing approach to see what the real bottom layer wind is. And if you're higher up and you've got a different direction, expect there to be some kind of shear layer. So that's creating this turbulence higher up that he hits at this point, which is awful. I mean, that is a really severe big collapse that happens at just the wrong height. So be particularly careful when you're coming into landings in strong wind. Expect there to be this kind of turbulent transition at this height, and prepare for it, which means don't be sitting in your pod harness with your legs straight out. You want to be getting ready. And one small thing that he could help with a landing here is, at this point he's almost got it right, but get your legs all the way down for your landing. So stand upright and prepare for a parachute landing fall if you've had any collapses close to the ground, so that you don't land like this with your legs out in front. That's the worst position for your spine to take an impact, when your legs are out in front and you bottom out on the bottom of your harness. So luckily he had good protection in the harness, and luckily he's recovered well from this. But that's a really, really hard landing to take on the bottom of your spine. So just always, if you see the ground coming up, get your legs right underneath you so that you can take that impact. But let's go back a little bit just to this collapse. It's very severe and unexpected. And let's just see if there's anything there that we can debrief you on. So at this moment here, I can see the glider is going into a gust, and it's being knocked back slightly. You can see as you come in here, you're climbing and the glider's behind you, and then it goes forward. At that moment, as it goes forward here, you are doing the right thing in putting the brakes down just a little bit, but then you change your mind and put your hands up. And that little catch and release, that little dab of brakes, is something to be very careful of if you're catching the glider ahead like that, because that actually destabilizes the glider. You're pushing the air out slightly out of the leading edge, and then as your hands go up again, it allows the air to come back in the cells just that little bit, and it just encourages the leading edge to be sucked over the falls. So at that point, I would have put more brakes on there. As it jumps forward, jam on the brakes. Because this isn't a landing swoop flare that you're setting up here. That is the glider going through a lifting bit of a gust and dropping into the sinking part of the gust. The glider is doing that for you. It's not really that you are under control of that movement. You're getting this little buck where you're feeling the glider shoot forward like that. And if you ever get that on your landing approach and you're close to the ground, always catch that shoot forward. And fairly actively, you can use much more brake than that. Whoa, just to catch those forward movements. And that is just active flying. That is what you'd always do when you're flying in thermic conditions and the glider jumps forward, shut it down. Catch it and then release it gently. If you release it quickly, you have this risk. Now, I don't think that is totally due to your brake input there. There's definitely something happening here that you're going into severe turbulence. And even with a big amount of brake here, I think you would have still got some collapse, frontal collapse there. But by having preempted it and being on the brakes at this moment, you would have a much less severe frontal. It wouldn't fly downwards so much. And then it would bang open earlier, which means you would have got flying without so much of a downward movement. Your response on the, once it's collapsed, is very good, because once it's blown out like this and you are now dropping underneath the glider, you've got a very limited amount of brake, very, very light brake on the left side there. You can see a little bit of trailing edge down, which is perfect. You don't want to pull too much brake, and most pilots in this situation would now jam on the left brake to keep the glider from turning and diving, and then over control and stall. So what you've done is perfect. A very, very light feather touch on the brake. Your right hand is coming down just with a small amount of clearing brake, and you can see that's catching the center of the glider just there as you're pulling down the brake and dropping, and it's flicking that wingtip open. That's the perfect input there, that you've just touched the brake and it's flicked that wing open. So at this point you've now fully opened the glider. From having a glider in that situation here, which looks awful, you've got the glider fully open again, and both of your hands are nice and high. So that is really good piloting, very good control, and you've kept your hands high, which allows the glider to go from this point where it's in parachutal. You can see all the tabs, all the line attachment points, they're kind of ridged. And that is a glider. If you look up and you see a glider like that, that's a stall. It's in a parachutal phase. So it needs to recover from that, which it does, because you keep your hands up. And the glider now dives forward and regains airspeed. So now it's flying beautifully, but there's the ground. Now I don't see how to fix that problem. From there to the ground, you just don't have enough height to come through the swoop and then flare. So if it's happened so low and it's banged out here, I already know I'm going to be doing a parachute landing fall. So just get your legs right down, and there's nothing much else you can do. I'd say your brake input is about perfect here, because you let it fly and then you start braking it here, and you're not over braking it, and there's nothing much more you could get out of that flare, because the glider just hasn't had enough time to swing and recover its airspeed. So it's got this downward trajectory. You have to take that on your legs. So practice the parachute landing fall. Have a look at my website for the method, and just practice doing that roll. I think in this situation you could have done a PLF and it would have taken out all of that energy. Otherwise, just be very careful on any landings in strong wind. Expect there to be some shear at some point, and be always very vigilant on when the glider jumps forward like that, you catch those forward shoots with enough brake, more than that, and hold it on until you've stopped the forward movement, until the glider's not going forward anymore. Then you can gently ease up your brakes. Don't be too quick on it, and you'll avoid that situation. So thanks for sending that clip in. I hope that was instructive, and I hope all of your landings are safe and in nice smooth air from now on. But thanks for sharing that. It's going to help a lot of pilots.